Welcome, traveler of time, seeker of calm, and explorer of sleepy worlds. Tonight, you're not just drifting into rest. You're drifting back thousands of years into the thick, humming jungles of Central America. Let the rustle of ancient leaves calm your thoughts, and the echo of distant rituals slow your breath. You're entering the realm of the Mayans. Before we step into the misty temples and earthen homes, take a moment to settle in. If this calming journey brings you peace, tonight, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue creating these relaxing historical tales, night after night. Let your eyelids grow heavy as we begin, not with the wars or calendars or gods, but with the ordinary lives that made the extraordinary possible. This is part 1 of 20, each unraveling the forgotten, the mundane, and the utterly fascinating. Routines of the Mayan people, routines so quiet, so ancient, they might lull you to sleep. Imagine the early morning mist rising over the lowlands of Yucatan. Before the sun fully appears, the forest is alive with a sleepy hum, the call of distant birds, the soft movement of leaves stirred by the breeze, and the gentle sound of stone being worked by hand. The Mayans awaken not in haste, but in rhythm, with the world. Their homes are simple, but precise oval or rectangular structures made of poles, clay, and thatched palm roofs. There were no stone pyramids, those were reserved for the divine. The ordinary Mayan family, numbering 10, lived in these humble houses, arranged around shared courtyards. The walls were smeared smooth with clay and lime, offering a soft beige finish that caught the sun just so. Inside, it was sparse hammocks for sleeping, clay pots, a grinding stone, and a small altar tucked in a corner. The day begins with fire. A woman, often the mother or eldest daughter, tends the hearth, an open flame at the heart of the home. She breathes life into the embers, using a fan woven from her palm. Smoke curls upward, mixing with the scent of maize. Corn, it was. Everything. Ground on a metate, or grinding stone, maize became masa, the dough used to make tortillas. Every day, this grinding was done by hand. Back and forth, the stone sang its slow, sleepy song. Children would hear it before they opened. Their eyes, a lullaby of labor. The first tortillas were laid on a hot comal, a flat ceramic griddle, and flipped with care. Nearby, beans simmered in earthen pots, spiced with native peppers and salt gathered from far-off coasts. Their food was simple, yes, but sacred. It wasn't just fuel, it was ritual. The first tortilla might be offered to a household spirit and left on a small plate before the altar. Meals were eaten sitting together on mats, rather than in chairs. No forks, no spoons, just hands and clay cups for sipping chocolate, bitter and frothy, reserved for elders or special guests. Sometimes the cacao was mixed with chili or honey, creating a slow-burning richness that lingered on the tongue. Cleanliness was close to godliness in Mayan life. Bathing was both spiritual and physical. Men and women would wash in nearby rivers or use steam baths called temazcal. These were small domed stone structures, half sauna, half sanctuary. Heated stones would be doused with water and herbs, releasing steam that opened pores and minds. Elders believed this purified the spirit, not just the skin. Even brushing teeth was a thing of careful habit. Young people used fibrous roots like natural toothbrushes, and some chewed on fresh mint, leaves to sweeten the breath. As the sun climbed, daily chores unfolded in rhythm. Men tended miltless corn fields, cleared by slash-and-burn methods, checking bean vines and squash blossoms growing together in a perfect trio. Women wove cloth on backstrap looms that colored, threads moving slowly, meditatively. Children helped, or played, or watched, learning from the repetition of days. The young weren't rushed. Learning was a slow fire, lit by watching, not speaking. Rituals, too, were part of daily life, though not as loud or bloody as the myths might suggest. Yes, there were sacrifices mostly of animals, rarely of humans, but more often rituals. Were quiet. A piece of jade pressed to the forehead. A whisper to the gods before planting a seed. A bloodletting ceremony using thorns and stingray spines, but only on special days, and not everyone. The Mayan calendar was rich with meanings. Each day held its spirit. Farmers, for instance, would never plant on a day ruled by the bat god E. Symbolized darkness and change, not growth. And then there were weddings. Not the grand feasts of royal houses, though those came. Too, but the everyday unions of villagers. Marriages were arranged, often by matchmakers or elders, who considered birth signs and family lineage. The bride, often around 14, would move into the groom's home. A ceremony might involve walking around the fire, sharing tortillas, or a symbolic weaving of threads. There were no rings, no priests, just family, food, and the quiet blessing of the hearth that, as the day faded, the heat softened. Shadows stretched long over stone paths. Fires were stoked once more. Dinner, similar. To breakfast, filled the air with warm smells, perhaps tamales wrapped in banana leaves, or squash soup, thick and earthy. Night fell slowly, blanketing the village in soft black. The jungle murmured its lullabies again. Hammocks swayed gently as the stars blinked into place, and the people slept dot above them. The pyramids stood not as homes, but as stairways to the gods. No one lived in them. They were climbed during festivals, not to escape, but to connect. Priests, dressed in feathers and paint, watched the stars for signs. Time was not linear here. It circled, coiled, an echoed dot, and so ended a typical day in the life of the ancient Maya. But to say typical is misleading. Every repetition held meaning. Every chore was a ritual. Every breath, a thread in a cosmic loom. This was not a civilization of noise or haste. It was a culture of time sacred, slow, and shared. Before you drift off entirely, take a moment to remember what we often forget. History isn't only wars and kings. It's the ordinary sweeping floors, grinding corn, braiding hair, bathing. In rivers, these quiet acts built pyramids and cities. And in learning them, maybe, just maybe, we find peace in our routines. If your eyes are heavy, that's good. If your mind feels softer, that's better. And if you've enjoyed this ancient rhythm, don't forget to subscribe so you can continue this journey one slow, sleepy step at a time. Part 2 awaits, with deeper rituals and even stranger customs. But not tonight. Tonight you rest, sleep, well, dream deep, and let the quiet world of the Maya cradle you in time. Tonight we continue the journey through the quiet, mist-covered corners of the ancient Mayan world. You've returned at just the right time, between the fading of the evening birdsong and the first blink of the fireflies. A moment wrapped in stillness. If you're new here, we invite you to breathe deep, relax, and subscribe to the channel so these peaceful travels can return to you night after night. Here, we explore the boring, sleepy rhythms of history, where time moves slowly and every forgotten gesture becomes a lullaby. Let your day melt away as we return to the soft firesides and hushed fields of the ancient Maya. Our first journey walked you through a typical day. But tonight, we drift deeper not into the high temples or carved stones, but into the rituals that held their lives together like threads in a weaving. The rituals were not loud. They did not shout. Instead, they whispered, repeating themselves, quietly in every corner of life. You might picture them as ceremonies grand and thunderous, but most were not. The truth is, the average Mayan didn't witness grand bloodlettings or sacrifices daily. Those were rare. What was constant was rhythm, observance, and respect for time, for land, for the spirits woven into everything. Take, for instance, the dawn ritual. Each morning, after the hearth was lit, the oldest woman might step outside, barefoot on the earth, and scatter a few kernels of maize to the wind. She would do this with her eyes closed, whispering thanks for the food, the fire, the breath in her chest. It was a ritual, yes, but it wasn't theater. It was comfort. It was a belief turned into a habit. And these were the rituals that shaped life. Each family also maintained a small house altar. Not a grand shrine, but a quiet space. Perhaps just a raised stone or carved wooden platform with small offerings. A feather, a carved bead, a twist of fragrant bark. Sometimes a tiny figure sat there, a protective spirit or ancestor. These altars were more personal than public. They tied the living to the dead, the waking to the dreaming dive further into the jungle. Away from the villages sat sacred cenotes natural, sinkholes filled with fresh water. These were not only vital to survival, but sacred sites for offerings. On certain days, chosen by the calendar, villagers would walk together in silence, carrying flowers, beads, or small animal bones, and gently place them into the cool blue waters. The offerings drifted downward, becoming part of the earth again. It was slow, solemn, and always quiet. And then there was the fire ceremony, a ritual that most villages practiced weekly. The hearth was seen not just as warmth, but as a spirit itself. On chosen nights, families would sit together around the fire with no work, no cooking, just sitting. They might share old stories or say nothing at all. The flame was fed carefully, not too little, not too much. A pinch of copal resin might be tossed in, sending sweet smoke spiraling into the night. The fire was not merely heated, it was a memory keeper. Let's drift now to the ritual of naming a child. When a baby was born, it was not immediately named. The Mayan calendar determined the child's birthday name, combining numbers and symbols in a system as old as their stars. A child might be born on the day of the wind, or the crocodile, or the rain. These symbols shaped their destiny. The elders would gather, consult the calendar, and offer guidance. The final name would then be whispered into the baby's ear by the mother, just before the child's first bath. The bath itself was sacred, infused with crushed flowers or warmed. Leaves, a mix of purification and blessing. That moment the naming and the first water was quiet magic. Weddings had rituals too, beyond the matchmaking. One custom involved tying the bride's and groom's garments together, weaving two pieces of cloth with one single thread in the center. This was not undone. It symbolized that from that point on, their paths were one. Another lesser-known ritual was the preparation of the wedding meal, not just by the women of the bride's family, but often by the groom as well. It was a test of humility and service. If the tamales were poor, it was said the marriage would be rocky. But if the broth was rich and the maize soft, the couple would enjoy peace. Sleep itself had its rituals. In a typical home, as night fell, hammocks were strung, not always left hanging. Each was carefully tied at the proper height to allow air to flow beneath. Children were sung to with soft, slow verses, little lullabies that spoke of jaguars, walking through the stars, or turtles carrying dreams. One such lullaby whispered, "The moon rocks you gently, the earth holds your feet, the wind carries your dream far beyond the trees." Simple words, repeated nightly. Generations swayed to them. Even farming, often mistaken for backbreaking, dull work, was built around rituals. Before planting, a circle was cleared, offerings of squash seeds and a drop of blood from the farmers. Earlobe were placed into the soil. He would then plant while chanting under his breath, not for drama, but to keep rhythm. Harvesting, too, was met with songs. The corn was not just picked. It was thanked, husked with care, and stored in granaries, lined with ash to keep insects away. The first cob harvested was never eaten. It was wrapped in cloth and placed on the altar, a promise of next season's hope. Let us now drift briefly into the calendar, the heartbeat of their rituals. The Mayans didn't have one calendar. They had several. The Sukan, a 260-day sacred calendar, marked ritual days. The Hab, a 365-day solar calendar, marked seasons. Together, they formed the calendar round, cycling every 52 years. Every combination of dates had significance. Certain days were unlucky. Others were sacred. People timed marriages, harvests, naming, building, and even haircutting based on these cycles. Living by the calendar meant living in rhythm, not just with the seasons, but with time itself. You may wonder, wasn't this tiring? Wasn't life full of rules? But to the Mayans, it was peace, predictability. Ritual didn't restrain them. It carried them. Like a hammock, it held the day in place. As we move toward the close of this second chapter, let us visit one last ritual, the preparation of death. When a person passed away, their body was washed with herbs, dressed in simple cotton, and placed, with small items, a bead of jade under the tongue to pay the underworld's toll, a bit of food, and a carving of a companion animal. Mourners sang not wailing, but low, slow melodies that rose and fell like breathing. Burial was often beneath the home or near the hearth, so the dead never left entirely. They became part of the house, the family, the fire. Sleep came easily. To the Maya, not from exhaustion alone, but from the calm of rhythm. When the night darkened and the sounds of the jungle deepened, the rituals did not stop. They simply turned inward into dreams, into spirit. And now, as your breath slows and your eyes drift, know that you, too, have entered a ritual. The slow telling of forgotten lives. The quiet weaving of ordinary days. And if this story brought you a measure of rest, consider subscribing so you can return here whenever the modern world grows too fast, too loud, too bright. In our next chapter, we'll explore the temples not as monuments, but as stages for rituals lost to time. But for now, may your sleep be as deep as a cenote, and your dreams as soft as the jungle wind. Kind traveler of time and sleep, you've returned to a place that never hurries, a place where the trees grow slowly, where the stars are measured, and where people once lived by rhythm, not rush. Tonight, we go deeper still into the heart of the Mayan world, past the fields and homes, past the hammocks and hearths, and into the solemn stone structures rising quietly through the mist. Yes, tonight, we visit the temples, but not as tourists. We go as dreamers, as sleepers, as listeners of stories buried in the dust. If this journey soothes your mind, helps you breathe slower, or simply brings you peace, consider subscribing to our channel. Together, we build a sanctuary of sleep, one story at a time. And now, let the hush of stone and time guide you. Picture the jungle at dawn. Birds call gently in the canopy. Somewhere, a monkey hoots once, then falls silent. And there through the trees you glimpse it, rising like a mountain, but shaped with intention. A temple, not a castle, not a palace, but a staircase to the sky. In Tikal, in Kalakmu, in Kopan, and in Palenque, such structures pierce the canopy. Their stones are weathered, soft at the edges, blanketed with moss. They are not pristine. They are not perfect. But they were never meant to be. Temples were not for living. They were for remembering, for ascending, for ritual. Built with hand-cut limestone, shaped with tools of obsidian and flint, each block was placed not only for stability, but for meaning. Some were engraved with glyphs, those sleepy, beautiful curves of Mayan writing. Others bore the faces of gods, the serpent, the jaguar, the sun. These carvings did not shout. They watched, they waited, and they guided the steps of those who climbed. Climbing a temple was not done on a whim. It was a ritual in itself. The stairs were steeper than you might expect. Some so steep, you had to ascend on all fours, as though crawling toward the gods. But this was the point. Climbing was meant to be humble, to slow you down, to prepare your spirit for what waited at the top dot at the summit. You would find not grandeur, but quiet. A small room, a roof comb rising like feathers into the air, inside an altar. Sometimes nothing more than a flat stone. On certain days chosen by the calendar priests would gather here, dressed in garments made of cotton and feathers. With paint across their faces, they would light incense. Copal resin, rich and thick, sent its white smoke into the sky. Prayers were spoken, not shouted. Offerings were made: cacao, maize, feathers, carved shells. Occasionally, a drop of blood from the tongue or earlobe, caught in a bowl lined with leaves. The smell of stone, smoke, and time. A place not of spectacle, but stillness. These rituals were not daily. They followed the rhythm of the calendar, the Tsukan, and the Hab. Some temples were aligned with the solstice, others with the equinox. At sunrise on those sacred days, the first rays of light would pass through narrow windows, touching a carving or a statue, exactly as intended. This was the Mayan clock, built not with gears, but with the heavens. Time measured in shadow and stone. But not all temples were tall. Many were low pyramids or platforms, built within courtyards. Around them, smaller structures called e-groups acted as solar observatories. Priests would mark the horizon, noting where the sun rose or set. Each change carried meaning: a signal to plant, a day to fast, a warning of an eclipse. These observations were not superstition. They were scientists, lived slowly. Beneath some temples, hidden from the sun, were tombs. A king might be buried here, along with his favorite cup, a mask of jade, a necklace of bone. But others were buried with less a spindle, a flute, a carved turtle. Death was not punishment. It was a return. And burial near or beneath the temple meant closeness to the ancestors. To be remembered. To join the cycle dot, let us pause now and imagine one such ceremony, a solstice sunrise in Palenque. The people gather before the temple of the sun. The jungle is quiet. A priest climbs the steps slowly, carrying a small bowl of maize. Children watch, still and wide-eyed. The sky turns pale gold. Then, just as the sun lifts, a beam of light cuts through the temple, illuminating the carving of a jaguar god on the eastern wall. The priest kneels, whispers a prayer, and places the maize on the altar. A single conch horn sounds, then silence, nothing more. The people return to their homes. The ritual is complete. These temples were not places of constant activity. They were not churches with pews or daily sermons. They were anchors, spiritual tools. They stood still so people could move with meaning. Even the act of walking around a temple had a purpose. Some villagers performed what was called the four corners walk, circling the structure at sunrise, noon, dusk, and midnight, whispering thanks for each part of the day. Simple, repeated. Remember dot inside some temples. Murals have survived paintings of blues and reds telling stories. A woman grinding corn. A man is planting. A group of dancers wearing masks shaped like owls. These images were not decorations. They were memory walls. Sleeping stories, waiting to be read dot, and still there were secret places within the temple grounds. Small hollowed spaces where a priest might sit for hours, meditating, listening to the wind, feeling the stone cool beneath them. Silence was seen as sacred. To speak to the gods, one must first grow quiet. The temples taught this. As night falls over these ancient stones, their outlines become soft shadows. The moon rises, brushing its silver fingers across the carvings. Bats fly overhead. The jungle hums gently. And still the temples stand, not in ruin, but in rest. They are not forgotten. They are sleeping, and you, listener, may now rest too. You've walked the ancient stairs, stood beneath the roof comb, and smelled the sacred smoke. You felt the rhythm of a world that honored time, not with clocks, but with patience. And if this journey brought you peace, we gently ask you to subscribe, so that you may return to deeper stories, sleepier truths, and a world that once moved as slowly as a dream. You've returned to the soft, humid breath of the ancient world, a world covered in green, a world wrapped in vines, echoing with bird calls and the occasional splash of a fish in still water. Tonight, we wander away from stone temples and human ritual. We step gently, slowly, into the deep forests of the Mayan lowlands to learn how the Maya didn't conquer nature, but lived with it. If this journey helps you unwind, feel safe, or simply breathe a little slower, consider subscribing to our channel. Each chapter is a quiet invitation back to forgotten worlds, where history whispers and sleep follows. And now, take a slow breath, deeper, and let's walk into the jungle. To the Maya, the jungle wasn't separate from the city. It was part of it. Homes, temples, markets, even ball courts, all were woven into the natural world. Trees stood like columns, roots curled around stone foundations. Birds nested on the rooftops. Jaguars left prints in the dust at night. The line between the built world and the wild was never clear and never meant to be. They called the jungle Cab, Earth, and it was alive. Everything in it had spirit. Not just animals, but trees, rivers, caves, even rocks. The Maya believed in Aluxob, tiny spirit beings that lived in the woods, guarding sacred places and punishing those who disrespected nature. Farmers might leave offerings of food or tobacco at the edge of the milpa before clearing brush. Travelers would whistle softly or tap a tree trunk 3 times before entering a dense path to announce their presence to the spirits. These were not superstitions. They were courtesies, like knocking before entering someone's home. The forest provided everything: food, medicine, shelter, tools. But the Maya never took without thought. When they harvested wood, they only cut mature trees and always left the youngest. When they hunted, they avoided pregnant animals. Nothing was wasted. Even bones were carved into needles, flutes, or tiny sculptures. Leaves were used for wrapping food, bark for making rope, and seeds for counting or game pieces. The jungle was a partner, not a possession. Let's walk now, slowly, through one such forest path. The floor is soft with fallen leaves. The air is thick and still. You hear a rustle above a toucan, flutters from one branch to another. Its curved beak gleams. A spider monkey swings low, then disappears into the green. The vines curl around. Every tree and hidden orchids bloom quietly in the shadows. This is not wilderness. It is home. The Maya knew every plant. The ramon tree, whose seeds were ground into flower during drought. The ceiba, towering and wide, its trunk believed to be the axis of the universe, connecting the underworld below, the middle world of humans, and the heavens above. No ceiba was ever cut without ceremony. And the copal tree, whose sap was burned, as incense was thought to carry prayers upward in its thick smoke. Even tiny, unremarkable weeds had purpose. Some cured fevers, others healed wounds. Their knowledge was slow-grown, learned over generations through whispers and trials. Not books. Animals were not just creatures. They were messengers, symbols, and sometimes ancestors. A jaguar, silent and powerful, was linked to night and royalty. The owl was a herald of death, but not always in fearsome ways, sometimes as a guide. The hummingbird, darting and impossible, was said to carry the thoughts of lovers. The crocodile held up the world on its scaly back. The world itself was thought to float on a cosmic sea, its edges guarded by turtles and serpents. The jungle also held secrets. Hidden caves, or chen, were considered portals to the underworld Xibalba. These places were cool, dark, and sacred. When the Maya entered a cave, they did so barefoot. With torches held low, they whispered prayers. Some caves held offerings, pots, beads, and bones. Others only silence, echoes that stretched far into the stone. These were not places of fear, but deep respect. To enter a cave was to cross between worlds. Water, too, was alive. Cenotes, those calm circular pools, were seen as sacred mouths of the earth. Some held offerings. Others were left untouched, known only to a few. Rivers were given names and spirits. A child might be taught to speak to the river before stepping in, to ask permission. This ritual, repeated countless times across lifetimes, wove the people into the land, not above it, not separate, but part of the forest's breath. Even the weather was spiritual. Rain was not just a cloud's gift, it was the work of Chak, the rain god who struck the sky with his axe. Thunder meant he was near. Farmers left tokens in the fields during dry months, twists of maize leaves, bits of cacao, or feathers to call to Chak. When rain came, people stood in it with hands lifted, eyes closed, faces upturned. A blessing. Let's rest now by a quiet pond. The surface is still. A dragonfly lands, rests, lifts again. In the shade of the trees, an elder sits, carving a flute from soft wood. Nearby, a child braids vines into a bracelet. The two say little, but the sounds around them, the birds, the leaves, the trickle of water speak enough. The Maya didn't fence the forest out. They didn't fear it. They listened to it. They asked them questions, and they waited for the answers in the rhythm of leaves, the flash of an animal's eyes, the turn of the wind. This was their science, their philosophy, their spirituality. Woven into vines, at night, the jungle changed. Fireflies blinked in, slow patterns. Bats swirled overhead, and far above, the stars shimmered through the canopy, just enough to see the shapes of constellations passed down through stories. One looked like a turtle, another, a canoe crossing the sky. Stories were told, slowly beside the fire, retelling how the world began, and how it would end not in violence, but in quiet, cyclical return. You, dear listener, are now part of that cycle. You've walked the path. You've heard the birds. You've stepped softly beneath the trees. And now you may rest. If this gentle walk through the forest brought you a little calm, or maybe helped your mind slow down, we invite you to subscribe so you can return any time. More quiet stories await. Tonight, we enter a different kind of space, one that hums not with ritual drums or rustling leaves, but with soft voices, slow footsteps, and the bartered rhythm of ancient commerce. This is the marketplace, a place of exchange, not only of goods, but of customs, smiles, and stories. The Mayan market was more than trade, it was tradition. And tonight, as you settle in and your mind begins to drift, we'll walk together through those peaceful stalls beneath the jungle sun. If you find your breath slowing and your thoughts growing quiet, consider subscribing to our channel. These slow journeys into sleepy history are always here when you need them. Now, take a calming breath, and let's step into the open air. Of a Mayan market square, picture it, the sun rising just above the treetops, casting long, warm shadows across packed earth. The village square begins to fill not with noise, but with motion. Traders arrive with their wares carefully wrapped in woven cloth. Farmers bring bundles of maize, still warm from the fields. Potters cradle their latest creations in soft straw baskets. And slowly, a colorful pattern begins to emerge. Mats laid out in neat rows, each one holding treasures from another part of the world. Unlike the stone temples or dense forest paths, the marketplace was open. It belonged to everyone, men and women alike bartered here, each one carrying knowledge of value passed down through families. There was no currency in the sense we know today. Instead, the Maya traded goods directly. A small clay bowl might be worth a handful of salt. A fine obsidian blade could earn several cacao beans. Yes, cacao beans were so prized, they sometimes acted as money. A man might carry a pouch of them tied to his belt, weighing each one with care before making an offer. The air carried dozens of smells: roasted maize, fresh tamales, dried chili, crushed flowers woven into garlands. Someone nearby grinds cacao for a special drink, frothy, dark, bitter, with a hint of chili. That cup is not just a treat, it's a ritual offering, a gesture of respect. You might share it before agreeing on a trade. The people here are not strangers. Even those who have traveled days to reach the market are greeted with warmth and formality, a nod, a hand over the heart. A few quiet words in the soft, musical tones of the Mayan language. Children watch their parents closely, learning the art of negotiation. Not loud bargaining, but respectful discussion. Everything is offered with quiet pride. Everything was accepted with quiet thanks. Each stall is a world. One might display brightly dyed cloth threads from cochineal insects, blues from indigo plants, yellows from crushed flowers. The weaver sits nearby, her loom quiet now, hands resting in her lap. Another trader lays out obsidian blades, each one catching the sun with a flicker. Another offers woven baskets, bone needles, and turtle shells, carved into bowls docked from the O. Coastal regions come bundles of salt wrapped in palm. From the highlands, jade beads smooth and cold to the touch. The touch. From deeper jungle paths come feathers bright green quetzal plumes, long and shimmering. These are prized, not only for beauty, but for ceremony. They may end up in a dancer's headdress, or tucked above a home altar. Let us pause now beside a basket of honeycomb. The honey is from stingless bees, kept in hollow logs near the forest's edge. The beekeeper sits cross-legged, offering tastes on the tip of a leaf. It's sweet, but earthy unlike anything else. Nearby, her child arranges tiny pots of beeswax and dried herbs, whispering their names under her breath. Food is traded too, of course, but also prepared right there, in the heart of the market. You smell roasting squash, stewed beans, ground, chiles mixed with tamarind and lime. You hear the soft slap of hands shaping tortillas. A woman serves a dish wrapped in a banana, leaf warm, fragrant, simple. You sit beneath a tree, share a bite, and for a moment, time disappears. And yet, the market is not chaotic. It follows cycles. It appears on certain days, according to the calendar. Not every day. That would be disorderly. No markets rise and fall like tides. Some villages trade every 5 days, others every 9, some at full moon, others on harvest days. Time tells them when to gather, when to rest. And the goods themselves follow patterns. Planting season brings tools. Rainy months bring woven cloaks. Dry seasons offer preserved fruit, dried fish, and salted meat. Sometimes traders bring not goods, but stories. A traveler might return from a distant city, say, Copan or Uzmal, and describe the temples there, or the masks worn at a recent festival. These stories are traded too. You might offer a pinch of salt to hear the tale of a king who spoke to thunder, or a priest who read the stars from the mouth of a cave. In this way, the market connects more than villages. It connects. Dreams. There were rules, of course. Not spoken loudly, but understood. No theft, no shouting, no sharp words. Trade was sacred. Disputes were brought before elders, who sat near the center, beneath a tree or under a small thatched shelter. These judges were not stern. They were thoughtful, slow to speak, slower to judge. Their presence was a reminder that this space belonged to the community, not to any one person. Nearby, young men play a game of chance rolling shaped stones and placing bets with beans or shells. A crowd gathers. There is laughter, but no tension. Even play follows the rhythm of the place. Elsewhere, an old woman ties a cord around her bundle of herbs, ready to begin the slow journey home. She's traded most of what she brought and carries. Back salt, chocolate, and a small jade carving for her grandson Dot. As the sun begins to lower, the light turns golden. Shadows stretch. Stalls are packed away. Mats rolled. Goods wrapped. And slowly, the market dissolves. Not with noise. Not with shouting. Just the soft sound of sandals on dust. Quiet farewells. A final handshake. A trader takes one last look at the square, now empty, and smiles. The market will return, as it always does. And so will the stories. You, too, may return any time your mind seeks stillness, or your heart longs for the hush of ancient rhythm. These journeys are always here, waiting beneath your breath, behind your eyes. If tonight's story brought you a little peace, please subscribe so the next chapter finds you easily. We've walked together through temples and forests, through rituals and markets, but tonight we enter the quietest space of all. The home, the place where the day begins and ends, where hammocks sway, fires crackle low, and stories are whispered in the dark. Settle in now. Let your thoughts soften. And if this journey helps you sleep or brings a moment of peace to your heart, consider subscribing to the channel. These slow stories, told with care, will always wait for you. And now, we step across the threshold of the Mayan home. It stands low, modest, and steady, made of vertical wooden posts bound with vines, filled in with mud and clay, and topped with a thick thatched roof of palm leaves, oval or rectangular, depending on the region, with a doorway often facing east toward the rising sun. No doors, no windows, just open air and the rhythm of light and wind. A home was not a place of walls, but of warmth, and it was never silent. There was always the hush of breath, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, or the bark of a dog near the garden. Inside, the floors were swept clean daily, packed earth, cool to the touch. No clutter, just hammocks tied between poles, a low wooden platform or two, woven mats, baskets, and a small altar in the corner. In some homes, a clay figure stood near the entrance, a guardian spirit to watch over those who slept. The hearth, set to one side, was made of 3 stones forming a triangle, with firewood stacked neatly beside it. This was the center, not just for cooking, but for storytelling, praying, sitting, and being together. In the mornings, the home stirred slowly. A woman knelt at the metate, grinding corn. The rhythmic sound, a soft, stone against stone whisper, was the home's first voice each day. Children awoke to it, their eyes blinking in the low, rising light. A pot of water sat beside the fire, warming for cacao or tea brewed from crushed leaves. The smell of maize filled the space. A basket of tortillas was wrapped in cloth. Everyone ate together, sitting on mats, passing clay balls between them. There was no rush. Morning was a gentle climb, not a race. Marriage in Mayan life was not romantic in the way modern stories tell it, but it was filled with care. Most marriages were arranged, guided by elders, with attention to calendar days, family lineage, and social roles. But affection grew slowly, like vines on a stone wall. Couples shared tasks, planting, weaving, grinding, carrying, and through this, they formed deep, patient bonds. In the evenings, a husband might weave a new cord for his wife's loom. She might mend his tunic or prepare his favorite stew. Love was not spoken loudly. It was shown in silence. Children were treasured, not spoiled, not scolded, but folded gently into the rhythms of home life. From the time they could walk, they helped gathering firewood, shelling beans, sweeping the floor with a bundle of stiff grass. Their toys were simple: carved animals, shells strung on cord, dolls made of cloth, balls of rubber. Play and work blurred into one. An older sibling might carry a baby on their hip while weaving a mat. A father might carve a tiny flute while watching his sons chase chickens in the courtyard. No one was idle, but no one rushed. Names were given, based on the day of birth, each one tied to the calendar. A boy born on the day of the jaguar might be named Alam. A girl born under the symbol of water might be called Ha. These names held weight, guiding a child's destiny. But children were not burdened by fate. They were loved into becoming. Homes were often part of clusters, 2 or 3 buildings around a shared courtyard. Extended families lived near one another. Grandparents, aunts, cousins, all within a short walk. Wisdom moved in circles. Elders watched the children. Mothers learned from their mothers. Fathers passed down tools. The household was not just one building. It was a living web. Bathing was a family routine, sometimes in nearby streams, other times in sweat baths called temascal. These small, dome-like structures held heated stones doused with water and herbs. Families entered together. The steam opened the skin. Songs were sung softly. Old stories were retold. A child might lie with their head in a mother's lap, steam rising like dreams around them. It was cleansing not just of the body, but of memory and worry. Illness was treated in the home. A healer might visit, bringing bundles of herbs and soft chants. Fevers were eased with baths, stomach aches with crushed bark, and sadness with whispered prayers. Healing was not just a treatment, it was a ritual. Everyone sat close. A mother would press her forehead to her child's, offering not medicine, but presence. The home changed with time. As children grew, hammocks were moved. New mats were woven. The fire pit might be repaired with new stones. Life left traces. Soot on the ceiling, footprints near the door. Small handprints hardened into clay walls. When a grandparent passed away, their body might be buried near the hearth or beneath the floor, wrapped in cloth, a bit of food placed beside them. They remained part of the home. Stories about them were told at night. Their name was spoken on feast days. They were not gone. They were folded into the walls. The end of the day came softly. After the final meal, perhaps tamales, or soup with squash and beans, children were wrapped in cloth and tucked into hammocks. Parents talked in low tones. An ember glowed in the fire pit. Lullabies were sung not just for babies, but for everyone. One old song said, "Sleep beneath the jaguar's tail. Drink from the turtle's cup. The stars are your blankets, the gods your guardians." It was a homespun prayer, sung for centuries. And now, dear listener, you too have entered the Mayan home. You felt the warmth of the hearth, the hush of hammocks swinging in the dark, the softness of mats beneath tired feet. You've heard the slow rhythm of grinding corn, the hum of voices, the rustle of sleeping breath. And if this brought you comfort, please subscribe so that you can return to this quiet world night after night when your own heart needs rest. Return once more to the land where time flows like honey, where knowledge grows in silence, and where wisdom is carried not in shouts, but in whispers. Tonight, we visit the minds and hands behind the rhythms of the Mayan world, not kings, not warriors, but priests, astronomers, and healers. These were the keepers of balance, the quiet listeners to stars, wind, and pulse. Let yourself slow down now. Let your body soften. Body soften. And if this journey helps you drift or simply offers you peace, consider subscribing to this channel. Together, we create a sanctuary of sleep, held gently by the past. And now, with a breath as soft as a falling feather, we step into the world. Of the sacred dot in a stone chamber, high atop a stepped pyramid, a priest waits. The air is still. He is alone, not because he seeks solitude, but because he holds space for others. He watches the horizon, the movement of the stars, the turn of shadows. He listens for the voice of the calendar, which speaks without sound. He is not dressed in gold. His robes are cotton, hand-dyed, often in red or blue. Around his neck hangs a pendant not of power, but of memory. Perhaps carved bone, or a bead of jade, passed from teacher to student across lifetimes. Mayans called their priests kagun, those who receive the gods. They were trained from childhood, often chosen based on dreams, birth signs, or lineage. Their schooling took years, not in reading or writing, but in memorization, movement, breath. They learned how to pronounce sacred words correctly, when to fast, how to breathe during chants, how to stand during eclipses, and how to burn incense so the smoke rose just right. They kept the calendar alive, not just by marking days, but by knowing the soul of each one. A priest could tell you which day was good for planting beans, which was unlucky for weddings, which carried the spirit of the wind, and which echoed the stillness of the bat. These were not guesses. They were learned through decades of observation, passed down through layers of tradition, like soft folds of cloth. Let's walk slowly now into the chamber of an astronomer priest. He has no telescope, but he has tools, shells, strings, carved sticks, a book folded like an accordion, its pages filled with glyphs and stars. He kneels by a narrow window in the east wall of his observatory, watching the first light of dawn. This light will strike the far side of the room only twice a year on the equinox. He makes a mark, quietly, reverently. He records no number, but rather a symbol, a blend of time, motion, and meaning. Astronomy and spirituality were never separate for the Maya. The movements of Venus were not just seen, they were felt. Venus could bring war, peace, floods, or births. Its rising and setting were noted carefully. Temples were aligned with it. Priests marked their path with beads on strings stretched between pegs. When Venus disappeared from the sky, the people lit fires in silence. When it returned, they sang. Priests were also caretakers of ritual. They led the fire ceremonies, guided harvest festivals, and sometimes performed bloodletting rites offering drops of their blood to the gods. But they did so quietly, slowly, often with no audience. These were not theatrical displays. They were acts of balance. To give something back, to stay in tune with the unseen. Elsewhere, in a smaller house near the edge of the village, a different kind of priest worked the healer. She was called Amen, the one who makes happen. She was not just a herbalist. She was part doctor, part midwife, part psychologist, part priest. Her hands knew the language of leaves. Her ears knew the meanings in a cough or a sigh. She walked with a pouch at her side, filled with crushed bark, clay powders, bits of root, polished stones, and feathers. When someone fell ill, the healer not only treated the body. She asked when the illness began. What dream came the night before? What was seen in the fire, or the flight of birds that morning? She might sit quietly for a long time before choosing a treatment. She might boil herbs, sing a chant, or whisper a prayer into water before pouring it over the patient's skin. The healer knew which trees bled healing sap, which flowers ease fevers, which smoke could calm a child. But more importantly, she knew the family. the rhythms of the home, the song of the village. She healed within that harmony. Never alone in times of birth, she guided the mother with calm hands. In times of death, she helped the spirit cross, sprinkling salt around the body, tying red thread around the wrist, and lighting the fire one last time. There was no panic, no rush, only peace. Only passage. In the Mayan world, knowledge was not rushed. Priests trained for decades before they led rituals. Astronomers watched the skies for years before recording a new pattern. Healers waited until the forest gave them what they needed. And once trained, these keepers of wisdom rarely left their roles. They were not replaced easily. They were remembered. There were also scribes HTZIB. They carved the words of the priests onto stone, painted them on codices, and drew them on pottery. Their hands preserved time. They worked slowly, with great care, using brushes made from animal hair or tools of bone and obsidian. A single glyph could take hours, but each line was a gift to the future. We must also speak of the quiet role of dreams. Priests and healers alike listened for messages in dreams. A dream of fire could signal drought. A dream of water, renewal. A dream of a snake, a warning. They believed dreams were another language of the gods, so they watched them carefully. They taught others to remember them. And when dreams returned again and again, they wrote them into the stories so they would not be lost. Now, as the night deepens, imagine a priest standing on the temple steps, gazing upward. The stars above him are not scattered lights. They are stories, calendars, warnings, blessings. He traces their path with his finger, then closes his eyes. Somewhere, a healer stirs a pot of herbs in a clay bowl. Somewhere, a scribe dips a brush into blue pigment and writes the name of a day. Somewhere, you lie beneath a canopy of dreams, and all of them, the priest, the healer, the scribe, stand beside you. They are not louder than the kings or the warriors, but they are deeper, quieter, and they remain. If this chapter brought you even a little closer to calm, if it helped your heart beat slower, your breath grow deeper, please subscribe so you can return to these peaceful stories again and again. As the night settles gently around you and the sounds of the modern world fade away, let your thoughts grow soft and quiet. You've arrived once more in the calm spaces of the ancient Mayan world. Tonight, we visit a place that echoes not with words, but with movement. Not with speeches, but with rhythm. We step slowly into the Pok Court, a ball court, not a stadium of cheer, but a space of silence, sweat, breath, and ritual. If this slow story brings your mind to stillness, we invite you to subscribe so you never miss another journey into sleepy, forgotten worlds. Now breathe in gently and let us step into the sacred game. A long stone corridor lies ahead, lined with sloping walls and flanked by high vertical stones. It's not grand in the modern sense. There are no benches, no painted lines, no shouting. Crowds, but it holds weight. You feel it in your chest before you ever understand its shape. This is the fleshly known here as Pok, the court of the Mayan ball game. It stretches before you like a quiet stage. The walls are angled inward, creating a narrow channel where the game is played. High above, rings of carved stone are mounted on either side. They seem impossible to reach. A ball must pass through those rings, but only with the hip. Not by hand, not by foot, just the hip. It seems difficult. It is. But this game is not about winning in the way we think. It is a dance, a reenactment, a living myth. Let's go back. Now to a time when the first rays of the sun strike the court. The priests have swept the floor clean. The players arrive not dressed in uniforms, but wrapped in cotton, leather, and protective pads around their waists, knees, and elbows. Some wear carved wooden belts. Others tie woven cloth around their temples. They do not speak. They warm up slowly, stretching, kneeling, pressing their hands to the earth. The ball is made of solid rubber, heavy, firm, and bouncing low. It's created from the sap of trees, harvested, shaped, and dried. A sacred object, like everything. Here, it doesn't bounce like a modern ball. It's slower, weightier. It hums when it hits the stone. Thud. 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 The game begins, but not with a shout. With stillness. A player drops the ball to the floor. It bounces once. He turns his body, strikes it with his hip. It arcs through the air and lands softly on the other side. The next player mirrors the move. The ball is passed like breath back and forth. Thud. Silence. Thud. Silence. It is not fast. Not loud. It's deliberate. Watched not for victory, but for meaning. To the Mayans, this wasn't just a game. It was the reenactment of the cosmic struggle. The ball represented the sun, the court, the path of the underworld. The players became gods, heroes, stars. The game echoed the myth of the hero, twins, two brothers who descended into the underworld to challenge the lords of death through a ball game, using skill and courage to triumph over darkness. Each game told that story again, not with words, but with movement. Spectators lined the edges, quiet, respectful. Elders murmured interpretations. Children watched wide-eyed. The priests observed the shadows, marking how they fell across the court. Some courts were aligned with celestial events, sunrise, equinox, and solstice. The game was timed to light. When the ball struck just as the sun crossed a certain point in the sky, it was said the gods were watching. Sometimes the game was ceremonial only, a symbolic act. Other times it was competition teams from different cities, representing more than themselves. There were regional tournaments, wagers, and rivalries. But even then, the tone was different from modern sport. No applause. Number. Chance, just reverence. And yes, there were sacrifices. But not always. Not every game ended with blood. In some rare, highly symbolic matches, a player, often a captain, was chosen for sacrifice. Not as punishment, not as a loss, but as an honor. To die on the court meant becoming one with the gods, a return to the sky. It's believed by some scholars that it was the winners, not losers, who were chosen. Others disagree. But the meaning is the same. Sacrifice was sacred and never taken lightly. Even in games without death, there was transformation. After a match, the ball was taken to the temple, blessed, touched to altars. Its path is marked in glyphs. The players would bathe in steam and rest beneath woven cloths. They were not just athletes. They were actors in an eternal play. Let's walk now along the sideline of the court. You run your hand along the cool stone. Carvings show scenes, players striking the ball, serpents curling from their hips, gods watching from the edges. A glyph reads, "The sun walks here." Another, "Victory belongs to balance." These are not boastful. They are reminders. The court is not about dominance. It is about motion and harmony. At night, the court changes. Moonlight spills across the floor. Bats flit through the air. The ball lies still in its resting place. But in the silence, you can almost hear the echo. Thud, thud, thud. The game continues in memory, in myth, in dream. Some players train their whole lives. Others are chosen at festivals. Children practice with smaller balls, learning to move without breaking rhythm. A good player is not strong, but smooth. They must learn to fall well, rise quickly, and strike gently. The best are quiet, focused. They play with their breath, not their strength. Even today, remnants of the ball game remain. Courts are uncovered in jungle cities. Balls are buried beside altars, glyphs preserved in crumbling books. And in small villages, echoes still bounce children playing with makeshift balls, grandparents telling stories of the gods who played a game to shape the sky. You, listener, have now walked that court. You've heard the ball, felt the silence between strikes. I saw the myth unfold with each gentle motion. And if this story slowed your thoughts, soothed your heart, or helped you prepare for sleep, consider subscribing so these ancient dreams can return, dear listener, to the place where time unwinds like thread through a loom, where silence paints stories older than speech, and where even a single line carved into stone can echo across centuries. You've returned to the Mayan world slow, quiet, and full of meaning. Tonight, we walk into the world of Mayan art. Not gallery walls or showpieces, but the art of daily life etched into pottery, pressed into stone, painted on homes, and woven into cloth. Let your eyes close, your breath steady, and if this slow unfolding of history soothes you, consider subscribing so these peaceful stories return to you. Night after night. Now, let us begin our journey, step by gentle step, into a world made of color, texture, and memory. Mayan art was not separate from life. It was part of it. It wasn't locked away in temples or displayed on pedestals. It lived in bowls passed hand to hand, in tunics dyed under the sun, in masks worn once, then stored in silence. The art of the Maya was language the kind that doesn't shout, but hums beneath the breath. Start with the stone. The Maya were master carvers. They worked in limestone, which was soft when first quarried and hardened with time. On the sides of temples and stelae tall, vertical stone monuments, priests and scribes carved scenes of history. A king seated on a throne of jaguar pelts. A queen offering flowers to a god. Warriors, scribes, dancers, farmers. Each figure posed not in motion, but in meaning. Faces were solemn, hands precise. Every finger, every bead of jewelry, every curl of hair had a purpose. And alongside the images, glyphs, hundreds of symbols, each a blend of sound and meaning. Some stood for days or names, others for ideas, sky, fire, maze, time. A single panel of glyphs might describe a birth, a war, a marriage, or a celestial event. But unlike modern writing, these glyphs were alive. They curved, danced, sometimes grew eyes or mouths. They were never static. A word could also be a creature. Many carvings were painted. Time has stripped most color away, but traces remain reds. From crushed cinnabar, blues from a sacred mineral blend known as Maya blue, yellows from clay, blacks from soot. A temple frieze, once covered in bright detail, now lies in soft gray. But if you could have seen it then, it would have glowed like a sunrise. Now, let us wander into a quiet home, where an artisan shapes a pot from clay. She spins it slowly, shaping with hands wet from the river. Her thumb leaves a perfect swirl in the base. Once dry, the pot is painted with brushes made from animal hair. Scenes appear. A man holding a cacao pod. A rabbit is sitting beneath the moon. A bird flying between stars. These images are not decorative. They tell a story, one that the drinker will hold in their hands and perhaps pass to their child one day. Pottery was not just for use. It was for a ceremony, a burial, offering. A vessel might hold food for the dead or incense for a god. Some were carved with poems, meant to be read aloud during feasts. Others were blank, left to speak through. Shape and texture alone. Art also lived in textiles. The Maya wove cotton into tunics, cloaks, sashes, and belts. Women worked on backstrap looms, simple frames, tied around their waists and fixed to a tree or post. As they wove, they sang. The patterns flowed like music. Diamonds for stars, zigzags for lightning, spirals for time. Red, blue, green, white each. Color made from plants, insects, minerals, or smoke. Weaving was more than a craft. It was a kind of memory. Patterns were passed down, generation to generation, like recipes. A young girl might learn her village's design by age 7. By 12, she'd add her twist. Each piece of cloth carried history, not written in glyphs, but in thread. Now come with me to the heart of a ceremonial plaza. The walls around you are painted murals that stretch from floor to roof. They depict not gods, but people. A feast, a ball game, a wedding, dancers mid-step, musicians bent over drums. The colors are bold, but not loud. The figures are simple, yet alive. These murals were not for decoration. They were stories too big for words. Seen all at once, they created a world. In Bonampak. One such mural survives. A procession moves through. Get nobles, drummers, feathered dancers, even scribes holding folded books. Near the edge, musicians wear jaguar masks. One plays a shell trumpet. Another holds a rattle. They don't look at the viewer. They look at each other, as though their music continues forever inside the stone. Masks were also a part of Mayan. Art, not worn daily, but for dance, ritual, and ceremony. Some were made from wood, others from jade, bone, or shell. A mask might transform the wearer into a god, an ancestor, or an animal spirit. During certain festivals, entire troops of masked dancers performed plays, reenacting myths, cosmic events, or village tales. These masks weren't meant to hide. They revealed. Even tools became art. A simple flint knife, shaped with care. A spindle whorl, carved with birds. A fishing hook, notched with symbols. Mayans believed beauty could live anywhere, not just in temples, but in daily life. A spoon could hold as much meaning as a scepter. A bracelet as much as a crown. And what of the artists themselves? They were not anonymous. Many signed their works with glyphs. Some were sponsored by nobles. Others worked alone. A pot might read, "This is the drinking cup of Abats." Or, painted by Xik, they were proud but humble. The work mattered. More than the name, art was also an offering. A way to connect to the gods. A way to remember. A way to teach. It was slow, intentional, sacred. Let us pause now beside a scribe's table. His hands are stained with blue and red. A codex lies open. Before him folded bark paper, coated with white lime. He dips his brush, draws a glyph. His breath is slow. He is not just writing. He is weaving the world. You, listener, have now stepped into that world. You've seen the lines in stone, the swirl of paint in clay, the thread pulled tight by hand. You've walked through murals, held a painted pot, felt the breath of a story written in color. And if that brought you rest, we gently invite you to subscribe so that this world may return whenever you need it. Dear listener, to a place where time does not tick, but breathes, where moments do not pass, but return, circle, and spiral. You have returned to the ancient world of the Maya, not to study kings or wars, but to step gently into the deeper rhythm of existence. Tonight, we journey into time itself, as the Maya understood it, lived it, and honored it. Their time was not linear. It was sacred, circular, purposeful. Let this chapter slow your sense of time, soften your thoughts, and guide you gently toward sleep. And if this story brings you peace, please consider subscribing. Each chapter is a quiet invitation to rest. And remember. Now, let us sit beneath the ancient sky and watch the stars move across a calendar that never ends. To the Maya, time was alive. It was not just a number or a page in a book. It had breath. It had will. Each day was a being. A personality. A guide or a warning. a whisper, or a shout. Days had names, tones, colors, even moods. Time was not something to chase. It was something to listen to. The Maya used not one calendar, but three, layered together like fabric woven on a cosmic loom. The first was the Chukan, a sacred cycle of 260 days. This calendar governed ritual life. It was made from a combination of 20 day names and 13 numbers. Each day was named something like 4 Jaguar, or 12 Wind, or 7 Rain. These combinations are repeated, creating a cycle used for naming children, selecting ritual dates, and guiding personal destinies. The Sokin had no months, no seasons, just rhythm. The second was the Hab, a solar calendar of 365 days, closer to what we use today. It had 18 months of 20 days each, plus a short final period of 5 nameless days called Waib. These 5 were thought to be spiritually dangerous days when boundaries blurred and caution was needed. People might avoid travel or work during Waib. They lit extra incense. They whispered prayers to keep the lance. Together, the Tsokan and Habi interlocked like gears. They formed the calendar round, a cycle of about 52 years, after which the same combination of sacred and solar days would repeat. This cycle was the heartbeat of daily and ceremonial life. Most people were born, grew, and passed within a single calendar round. To reach the end of one was rare and marked with great ritual. But there was a third, calendar one grander still, the long count. A long count was a linear system used to record the passage of vast time across thousands of years. It began with the mythic date August 11th, 3114 BC. In our modern calendar, the day when the world was last created, according to Mayan belief. From that moment, time was measured in units called baktons, katons, and tons. A bakton equaled about 394 years. The most famous long count date? 13.0.0.0.0, which corresponded to December 21st, 2012, a date misinterpreted by the modern world as a prediction of the end. But for the Maya, it was simply the end of one cycle and the gentle beginning of another. Time didn't end. It turned. Let's pause now beneath a starlit sky. A Mayan priest stands quietly on a temple platform. He holds a folded bark paper codex filled with glyphs. By torchlight, he traces a number with his finger, counting the days from a great ancestor's birth to the present. He watches the moon, notes Venus in the east, then turns and says, "Tomorrow is a day of maize, a day for planting." The calendar has spoken. This isn't superstition. It's an observation of sunrises, seasons, eclipses, animal migrations, and flowering trees. The Maya watched the sky so closely that they predicted eclipses, tracked Venus with precision, and built entire cities aligned with solstices and equinoxes. They carved this knowledge into stone on stele, lintels, staircases, and altars. It would never be lost. Even numbers held power. The number 13 was sacred, linked to the layers of the heavens. The number 9 belonged to the underworld. Time moved between them, like a breath between inhale and exhale. Everything had its place in this rhythm: birth, death, harvest, drought, the rising of kings, the fall of cities. Let's return to the hearth of a quiet Mayan home. A child asks their grandmother, "What day is it?" She answers, "It is 5. Wind, and then adds, "It is a good day for learning, not for climbing trees." The child accepts this. Time has personality. It is not questioned. It is befriended. Birthdays were not just celebrations. They were maps. A person born on 3, Deer, might grow into a musician, a farmer, or someone gifted with healing. Another born on 11 Knife might have a sharper mind, or be called to the priesthood. These were not destinies. They were tendencies, guides, and so each child was watched with care. Their name came from the calendar. Their path unfolded. Day by day. Time also governed the community. The planting festival came not by date alone, but by the calendar's signal. The ball game was played when the sun reached a certain point in the sky. The market opened every 5 days, following its sacred rhythm. The priests fasted every 20th day. Women bathed in special herbs on 7 water to honor fertility. Men made offerings to the maize god on 2 seed. Time was not separate from life. It was woven through it. Even death had its day. A person's final breath was recorded with the same care as their birth. A priest might whisper, "She left us on 10 monkey, a day of joy." The family would nod, comforted. The body was wrapped, placed near the hearth, and the date carved into a clay pot or scratched into plaster. Time continued, so did memory. And now, listen closely. Can you hear it? The breath of time, not ticking, but turning. Not fading, but returning. A circle, a spiral, a dance. You, dear listener, have now stepped into that dance. You've felt the shape of time as the Maya knew it. You've heard the slow numbers, the careful glyphs, the deep silence of turning cycles. And if that brought you comfort, if it helped you slow down in your world of minutes and alarms, please subscribe, so you may return whenever you need. Stillness. Welcome again. Dear dreamer of ancient things, you've returned to the quiet world where history whispers like wind through fields, and where every seed tells a story older than words. Tonight, we follow the soft path of a single plant, but not just any plant. We follow maize corn not merely as food, but as spirit, myth, breath, and memory. In the Mayan world, maize was not grown. It was born, not harvested, but honored. Let this slow chapter ease you gently toward sleep. And if it comforts your heart, consider subscribing, so that these restful journeys can always return to you when you need them most. Now, take a long, calm breath and walk with me into the maize field. At first, the field seems quiet. A clearing in the forest, flat earth, pale in the morning sun. But look closer, listen deeper. Beneath your feet, a story grows. It begins in stillness, in black soil stirred by careful hands. A farmer kneels, pressing a single kernel into the earth. He covers it gently, speaks a word beneath his breath, and moves on. One seed at a time, one prayer at a time. This is Milpa, the traditional Mayan field, not just of maize, but of life. Here, corn is planted with beans and squash, the 3 sisters. Each helps the others grow. Beans climb the corn stalks. Squash covers the ground, keeping moisture in. The soil is balanced. The harvest is shared, but corn is the center. Always the center. According to the Popol Vuh, the sacred Mayan book of creation, humans were first made from mud, soft mud, then from wood, too brittle, and finally from maize. At last, they were right. The gods shaped their bodies from corn, dough, their bones from stalks, their breath from its steam. We are not just fed by maize, the Maya said. We are maize. Even the calendar reflects this. Certain days carry maize names: 8 seed, 4 corn, 13 rain. Festivals mark the planting and the harvest. At every turning of the year, offerings are made, the first ear of corn wrapped in cloth and placed on the altar, a handful of kernels tossed into the fire. In some villages, people whisper thanks before every meal. This is not food. This is who we are. Let's walk. Now into the field. The maize is waist-high, green, and waving. The sun filters through the leaves. The stalks are tied with colored thread blue for rain, red for the sun. A woman places a stone at the edge of the row to honor her grandfather, who taught her how. To plant, she hums a low song. Not loud, not meant for anyone but the plants. Every part of maize is used. The kernels are ground on a metate, then cooked into tortillas, tamales, and a tolaya worm, thick drink made from corn and water. The husks are soaked and wrapped around food. A silk is dried for medicine. Even the ash from burned cobs is used in soap and fertilizer. The process of making tortillas is slow and sacred. First, the kernels are soaked in lime water overnight, a process called nixtamalization. It softens the maize, enriches its nutrients, and releases its flavor. In the early morning, a woman kneels and grinds it on a stone. Her hands move in rhythm, back and forth. The sound is soft, ancient. The dough is shaped, pressed, and placed on a hot clay griddle, the como. The scent fills the air warm, nutty, calming. Children wake to this scent. It means the day has begun. Fathers pack tortillas for the field. Elders sit with a cup of cacao and a folded tamal. Food is not rushed. Meals are shared on mats, in a circle, beneath trees, or by the hearth. No forks, no plates. Just hands, just earth, just maize. In times of drought, people turn to the maize god, yum cocks. They make offerings of cacao, feathers, or carved ears of corn. They dance with painted faces. They plant prayer sticks in the ground, hoping the rain will come, and when it does, the whole village sings. Not for water, but for life itself returning. Even death is marked with maize. A small ear is placed beside the body. A bowl of corn dough is buried near the feet. It is believed the spirit will need it for the journey. In this way, maize walks with the person from birth to death and beyond. There are also maize masks, worn during festivals. Some are smiling, others are solemn. Some show green corn, the young spirit. Others show yellow, the ripened soul. A few show black maize, the end of the cycle. But all are beautiful. All are loved. Let us pause now beside a village courtyard. The harvest is in. Corn hangs from the rafters to dry. Children peel husks and make dolls. Women braid the leaves into ornaments. A pot of pozole simmers nearby a thick stew of corn and meat, rich with herbs. An elder tells a story, how once, in a year of hunger, a single stalk grew in the middle of a stone path, and the whole village survived. No one speaks. Everyone listens. The story is not about luck. It's about faith, about listening to the shu, land, about being patient with time. Corn is not rushed. It takes 260 days from seed to harvest, the same length as the Chu-Kan calendar. This is no coincidence. The cycle of maize is the cycle of life. Even the ball game, as we saw earlier, uses maize symbolism. The ball bounces like a kernel. The court is the earth. The players, their caretakers. The gods, its audience. You, dear listener, have now walked among the maize. You've seen its planting, its harvest, its presence in prayer, in kitchens, in the breath of myth. You've heard the grind of stone, the whisper of leaves, the bubbling of stew. And if these soft sounds brought you a moment of rest, we invite you to subscribe, so these stories can find you again. Whenever the noise of the world grows too loud, welcome once more, quiet traveler of history and dream. Tonight, we walk into the softest part of the Mayan world, not into temples or rituals, not into the jungle or the sky, but into the arms of the family and the hearts of children. The smallest voices, the shortest footsteps, the lightest touches. In ancient Mayan life, childhood was not rushed, it was not overlooked, it was honored. If this peaceful story helps your thoughts grow still, we invite you to subscribe so that these journeys into sleepy history return to you, night after night. Now take a breath, long and gentle, and walk with me into a village morning, a child, stirs in their hammock. The sky is still pale. Smoke from the fire creeps gently through the thatch roof. Outside, a bird sings once and then is quiet. Inside the home, a mother kneels over the fire, shaping tortillas. The rhythmic sound of her hands wakes the children not with alarm, but with a promise. The day is beginning, and you are safe. Children in Mayan villages rose early, not by clocks, but by the sun, the fire, the sounds of grinding stone. There were no alarms, no hurry. Each child had a place, a rhythm, a role. The little ones helped in small ways, carrying firewood, brushing leaves from the floor, fetching water in tiny gourds. Older siblings rocked babies in hammocks, watched the cooking pot, or followed a parent into the garden. But even work was gentle. Learning came through watching, not lectures. A boy would sit beside his father for hours, observing how to plant maize or twist rope from fiber. A girl would mimic her mother at the loom, fingers moving slowly, sometimes tying knots just to feel the thread. There was no rush to master anything. Childhood was a long dawn. Names held meaning. A child was named based on the sacred calendar. A baby born on 4-wind might be thought curious and fast-thinking. One born on 9-night might be a dreamer. These names were spoken with care, always with a day attached. You were not just you were the time you came from. Babies were swaddled and carried close. Mothers sang to them in soft tones, lullabies, that spoke of the moon, the river, the gods, the stars. One common song said, "You are corn in my hands, water in my arms, a flame by my side." As children grew, they slept in hammocks of their own, tied just above the ground. Rocking gently with each breath of wind out play was simple, yet full of imagination. Children shaped animals from clay. They built tiny temples from stones. They played games with beans, shells, and rubber balls. They chased each other through the dust, past the garden, around the base of temples. A favorite game involved rolling around fruit across the ground and trying to strike it with sticks. Another used carved animal figures. Hidden and found again stories were constant, told by elders in the evenings or whispered by older siblings before sleep. Tales of gods, spirits, and animals who talked. Of monkeys who stole cacao. Of turtles who carried dreams. Children listened wide-eyed, then retold them later in their own way, adding details, inventing endings. Through this, they learned memory, rhythm, and community. Discipline was gentle. There were a few harsh words. Instead, there were stories. A child who lied might be told of a spirit who steals the voices of dishonest children. One who refused to help might hear the tale of the jaguar who punished the lazy. These stories are taught without shame. They invited reflection, not fear. Education depended on class. In noble families, boys were taught to read glyphs, count using dots and bars, and recite dates and rituals. They studied astronomy, mathematics, and calendar lore. Girls learned weaving patterns, cooking sequences, and herbal remedies. But even in common homes, knowledge flowed through tasks, stories, songs, and silence. Everyone learned the sacred rhythm of life. Let us now visit a ceremony for a newborn. The baby is 4 days old. The mother holds the child near the hearth. An elder blesses water with soft words. The baby's forehead is touched with cornmeal. The family offers incense to the fire. There is no great noise, no gifts, just presence, just quiet joy. Around age 3 or 4, a child is gently introduced to the tools of their world. A small pot for carrying water, a short stick for planting, a blunt needle for threading. Nothing is forced. These are invitations. The child chooses when and how to begin. At age 7 or 8, children take on more responsibility. They join. their parents in the field, at the loom, or in the market. But again, they are not pushed. They are guided. They learn by rhythm, not rules. The same task repeated slowly, until the hands remember it better than the mind. In noble households, boys might enter a house of learning, where priests taught them how to read glyphs, perform rituals, and track the stars. They used codices folded, books made from bark paper. Students learned the meanings of each day's sign, practiced the language of ceremony, and memorized the names of ancestors. Girls, meanwhile, learned from elder women the chants for childbirth, the colors for weaving, the herbs for healing. But no matter the household, one thing was constant. Children were never excluded. They attended rituals. They walked in processions. They helped prepare offerings. They watched the ball games, listened to the marketplace, and wandered the paths of temples. Life was not hidden from them. It unfolded around them. Adolescence came. Slowly. There was no sudden line between child and adult. Instead, there were stages. A girl who wove her first full cloak. A boy who carried his pack to the market. A youth who joined the village dance. Each moment marked a soft transition. Marriage might come at 13 or 14. But even this was not abrupt. Families prepared gently. Elders arranged matches, but with care. And even after marriage, a young couple might live near their parents, visiting often, still learning. And yet, childhood never truly ended. In the eyes of elders, each adult still carried their name, their day, and their beginning. At the fire, a grandfather might call his son not man, but boy of 10 flint. A reminder that we are always becoming. Now let us rest beneath a ceiba tree, beside a group of children at play. One draws shapes in the dust. Another weaves tiny flowers into her braid. A boy tosses a bean into a bowl, misses, and laughs. An elder watches from the shade. The sun is warm. The air smells of stone and maize. And time moves slowly. You, gentle listener, have now walked the path of Mayan childhood. You've rocked in hammocks, played with clay, listened to stories, and watched the world through smaller eyes. If this softened your mind or brought comfort to your heart, we invite you to subscribe so these stories may cradle you again when sleep calls. Welcome back, patient dreamer, to a world where life moved softly through thread and flame, where every morning began with hands shaping dough, and every evening ended beneath woven cloth and starlight. Tonight, we step into the heart of the Mayan home. Not the walls, not the roof, but the center, the women. Their steps were quiet, but their presence held everything in place. Let your breath deepen, your shoulders soften. And if this gentle journey brings you rest, we invite you to subscribe. These sleepy stories are always here for you. The night is still, and sleep is near. Now, walk with me into the cool shade of a courtyard where a woman kneels by the fire. A puff of smoke rises. She fans it softly, adjusting 3 stones that cradle the cooking pot. This is not just a chore, it is a sacred rhythm, passed from mother to daughter for hundreds of generations. Her hands move without thinking, kneading maize, shaping tortillas. The sound of her palm against dough is as steady as breath. Mayan women began their days before the sun. In the early dark, they lit the fire, not with matches, but with coals preserved from the night before. They stirred atole, warmed tortillas, prepared food not just for hunger, but for offering, healing, and ritual. The first tortilla was often placed on the home altar, dedicated to the spirit of the hearth. Quiet, simple, deeply meaningful. They wore hooples blouses woven on backstrap looms, tied around the waist with sashes. The hoopel was not just clothing. It was identity. A pattern on each one told a story of village, lineage, and cosmic meaning. Some showed stars, others corn. Some were bordered with jaguars, birds, or winding snakes. To wear one was to carry tradition on the skin. Women were weavers of cloth, yes, but also of time. The loom tied around their waist was a link between past and present. The threads they pulled were not hurried. They moved in meditative silence, one strand at a time. Songs were often sung during weaving soft, repetitive melodies that helped focus the mind. In the song, they named the threads. Blue for sky, green for maize, red for fire, white for bone. In addition to weaving, women were healers. They gathered herbs in the forest, learning which leaf cooled a fever, which bark soothed a cough, which flower helped with childbirth. They stored these medicines in dried bundles, tucked into a clay jar, or hung from rafters. Healing was not loud. It was touch, warmth, steam, and prayer. A sick child might be wrapped in warm leaves and sung to as water boiled beside them. A tired elder might be massaged with fragrant oil. A pregnant woman might receive a bath with crushed flowers, guided by midwives who knew the rhythms of breath and pain. These women did not write books, but their knowledge lived in hands, in songs, in memory. Women also worked the fields, especially in the milpa garden beside the home. They planted squash, chilies, tomatoes, and herbs. They carried water from cenotes or streams in clay pots, balanced on cloth-wrapped heads. Each step was measured. Their backs are straight. Their eyes are calm. In the marketplace, women were traders. They brought woven cloth, herbs, honey, pottery, and food. They sat on woven mats, bartered with care, taught their daughters how to weigh beans in the hand, how to spot good salt by its color, how to greet a stranger with a smile, but a firm voice. They were storytellers, too. Around the hearth, they told tales of spirit creatures, of stars that walk, of women who turned into rivers. Stories were shaped as softly as tortillas flattened in the hand, warmed in the telling. Children gathered, eyes wide. Husbands listened too quietly, while, pretending not to dot in ritual, women played essential roles. They prepared offerings, dressed altars, and sang during rites. A grandmother might chant while grinding maize, each motion a prayer. A mother might light incense and wave it over her baby before bed. In some villages, women kept the sacred calendar for the family, tracking the good days for planting, weaving, naming, or traveling. Marriage often came early, around age 14. But it was not the end of girlhood. It was another weaving two threads brought together. A bride moved into her husband's family home, often beside her own mother's. Her role grew slowly. She did not begin with full responsibility, but learned over time, gaining skills, confidence, and wisdom. Motherhood, when it came, was met with ritual. A midwife helped deliver the child, often squatting beside a fire, holding onto a rope or the hands of other women. After the birth, water was blessed. The baby was touched with maize, cacao, flowers, and cloth. A small thread was tied around its wrist. The mother bathed in herbs. And life continued. But not all women were mothers. Some never married. Others lived alone or with sisters. Some became priestesses, scribes, or midwives. In noble cities, women held land, managed estates, and even ruled. Queens like Lady Xibalba of Yaxchilan performed bloodletting rites, read celestial charts, and appeared in carved stone as powerful spiritual figures. Even in small villages, widows were respected. Elders sought their advice. Children listened. When they spoke, their hands, though wrinkled, still moved with grace, grinding, weaving, blessing, teaching. Let us sit now beside one such woman. Her hair is silver and bound in a long braid. She holds a spindle in one hand, a cup of warm cacao in the other. She watches her granddaughter at the loom. She says nothing, but her silence is full of approval. Her breath moves like a breeze. She does not lead the village, but the village leans toward her, always. You, dear listener, have now walked among the women of the Maya. You've smelled their cooking fires, heard the hum of their weaving songs, watched their hands heal and hod, shape and bless. You've seen the strength in their stillness. And if this brought your mind to rest or eased your breath, we invite you to subscribe so these voices may return when you need them. Welcome again, gentle traveler of slow stories and quiet memories. You've returned to the Mayan world, where the rhythms of the earth still guide the hand, and where days begin with firelight and end beneath the stars. Tonight, we walk alongside the Mayan men, not warriors in shining armor, but fathers in the field, builders on stone walls, astronomers at dawn. They did not shout. They did not rush. They lived by breath, soil, season, and story. If this peaceful story settles your thoughts or helps your body rest, we invite you to subscribe. These sleepy journeys are always your quiet companions for the night. Now, breathe in, as slow as the swing of a hammock, and walk with me into the early morning of a Mayan village. The air is still cool. The first birds are singing, soft and distant. In a quiet home, a man sits on a woven mat, tying the cords of his sandals. Beside him, a clay cup of a tole worm, thick, made from ground maize and water. He drinks slowly, not for taste, but for readiness. Outside, the sun lifts just above the trees. Mayan men were early risers. Their work began with the sky, in the fields, on the walls, in the forests, wherever the day called. Most were farmers, caretakers of the milpa, where maize grew with beans and squash. But they were more than planters. They were timekeepers. Each planting followed the calendar, the rain, and the moon. A man did not scatter seeds without first offering thanks to the earth and asking permission. He walked the field with bare feet, feeling the soil. He carried a bag of seeds at his hip, a digging stick in his hand, one step, one seed, one breath. Sometimes his child followed behind, placing squash seeds where he pointed. There was no tractor, no plow, only hands, only trust in the ground. Other men were builders. With limestone and flint, they shaped temples, homes, ball courts, and observatories. They carved blocks, lifted them with ropes, and aligned them with the stars. A mason might spend months shaping the corner of a temple, making sure the morning light would pass just right on the solstice. He did not rush. Each stone was sacred. Some men were carvers. They sat in shaded corners, working jade, obsidian, and bone. They shaped beads for necklaces, gods for altars, and glyphs for stele. A good carver knew the grain of the stone, knew how it wanted to be touched. He listened before he cut. Even a single glyph, a curl of wind or the open mouth of a jaguar, could take hours. There were hunters, too. They moved through the jungle like mist. They tracked deer, birds, peccary, and sometimes fished in quiet rivers. A hunter carried a blowpipe or a spear. He learned the paths of animals, not from books, but from listening, watching the ground, the leaves, the birds in flight. When he took a life, he thanked the spirit of the animal. Sometimes he burned herbs afterward, as a sign of respect. Some men were astronomers, watching Venus, the moon, and the shifting constellations. They climbed towers before sunrise and measured light with ropes and pegs. They kept calendars carved into stone or painted on folded books. They advised kings, but they were also fathers, husbands, and villagers. They sat by the fire like anyone else. They drank cacao, told stories, and watched the smoke rise like time. Let us pause now beside a group of men in the marketplace. One unrolls a cloth filled with obsidian blades. Another displays dried fish. Another trades salt for honey. They speak with low voices, nodding, listening, negotiating, not with volume, but with patience. A boy watches from his father's side, learning how to weigh value not in coins, but in care not in the home. Men took part in many tasks. They built walls, cut firewood, and tended gardens. They repaired hammocks, carved tools, and made offerings. A father might rise before the rest, stoke the fire, sit in silence, then wake his child with a soft touch and a folded cloth. He did not shout. He waited. Boys learned by watching. A father did not often explain in words. He demonstrated how to grind maize, how to braid a cord, and how to tie a bundle. He let the child try, fail, try again. There was no punishment for mistakes, only more time. Mayan men also participated in rituals. During festivals, they danced with painted faces, wore masks of gods, blew conch shells, or carried torches. Some offered drops of blood from their tongues or ears, collected on paper and burned in incense. These were not acts of pain, but of balance, of offering, of return. Even in daily life, a man might offer a quiet prayer before entering the forest, or speak aloud to his ancestors before drinking. Every act had meaning. Every tool had memory. Let us now follow a young man, just married. He walks with his wife to her new home, his home now too. He bows before her parents, carries a basket of food as a gift. He helps tie her hammock, lays stones for the hearth, and weaves a mat. He does not demand. He joins. He listens. Their life will grow together. As a man ages, he becomes a teacher, not in schools, but in life. Young men visit him with questions about planting, about dreams, about marriage, about the calendar. He doesn't always answer directly. Sometimes he tells a story instead. Sometimes he says nothing at all. His silence is part of the lesson. And when he nears the end of his life, his family gathers around him. They wash his hands. They press cornmeal to his lips. They burn incense. They tie a red thread around his wrist. He rests beneath the same roof where he was born, and after he passes, his body may be buried nearby, beneath the floor or beside the hearth. He does not leave. He becomes part of the home. Now, sit with me by a fire. A man sharpens a tool, slowly, steadily. His son braids rope. A dog sleeps at their feet. In the distance, the last bird calls for the night. The fire crackles. The stars appear. And time moves gently forward. You, dear listener, have now walked with the men of the Maya. You felt their hands in the soil, their breath in the wind, their patience in the stones. If this brought your mind to stillness, your thoughts to rest, please subscribe so you can return here, where peace grows with the maze and silence, tells its own stories. Welcome again, gentle soul. You've returned to the still and sacred rhythm of the Mayan world. Tonight, the village does not sleep, but it does not rush either. The fire burns brighter. The incense curls higher. The drums begin to speak, not loudly, but slowly like a heart. You've arrived on a festival night, not of chaos or crowds, but of ceremony, memory, and sacred balance. Let your breath follow the beat. And if this story softens your mind or comforts your heart, we invite you to subscribe. These restful journeys are always here, ready to carry you into a dream. Now, take a quiet breath and let us walk softly into the center of the Mayan celebration. The air is thick with scent, copal resin, sweet flowers, warm maize, and smoke from cedarwood. The people gather slowly, dressed in their best woven cloth, hooples embroidered with the colors of their lineage, sashes tied in careful knots. One speaks loudly, but there's a shared hum, a feeling like the air before rain. Mayan festivals are not scheduled by season or by weekend. They are summoned by the calendar. Each day in the Tzu, So, Sen, and Hab carries sacred meaning. Certain days call for planting, others for fire, others for death, for love, for the sun, for cleansing, for stars. The priests read the sky and the stone, and when the time is right, they begin preparations. The festival might last one day, or 5, or 13. Time bends. The village bends with it. The first step is always cleansing. The people bathe individually, or in groups, in rivers or sweat lodges. They fast. They burn incense in their homes. They clean their altars, sweep their courtyards. They prepare not to show, but to receive God at dawn on the first day. The drums begin, softly at first. Just 2 or 3 men were seated cross-legged in the plaza. Their drums are made of hollowed logs, stretched with deer hide. The beat is steady, like breath. Children gather. Elders sit nearby. Vendors arrive, laying out tamales, cacao, beads, and flowers. A priest steps forward, carrying a bowl of incense. He circles the fire 3 times, sprinkles the earth with maize, lifts his hands to the sky. He says little, but the meaning is clear. The gods are invited in some festivals. A dance begins, not a performance. A prayer. Dancers wear masks of jaguars, owls, crocodiles, and bats. They move slowly, their feet sweeping the dust. Each step is counted, tied to a day sign, a number, a god. Their cloaks sway. Their hands curl like wind. They become not people, but stories in other festivals. A ceremonial fire is lit. The wood is laid in a spiral. Each layer represents a world: earth, sky, underworld, and ancestors. The fire is blessed, then lit. It smokes first, then flares. Around it, the people place offerings: squash, salt, feathers, cacao, stone beads, and flowers. A woman places a pot of stew. A child lays down a carved bird. Each gift speaks, not in sound, but in symbol. Some festivals include the ball game. The players paint their faces. They wear sashes, pads, and feathers. The court is swept clean. The ball bounces with ritual weight, struck not with hands, but hips. The game is not to win. It is to reenact the movement of the sun, the struggle of day and night. The people watch in silence. When the ball strikes the stone ring, there is no cheer, only stillness. The gods have spoken. As the sun reaches its highest point, the midday ritual begins. Priests and priestesses gather at the altar. They read glyphs from folded codices. They chant the names of the gods, the days, the winds, the rains. Their voices rise and fall, not in song, but in measured tone. Each word opens a door. Sometimes a blood offering is made. A thorn is drawn across the tongue or earlobe. The blood drips onto a cloth or into a bowl of flowers. It is not dramatic. It is not violent. It is quiet, a gesture of balance, of giving back what was given God at sunset. The procession begins. The people carry torches. Some hold drums, others flowers. Children walk with their parents. Everyone wears their best. The path circles the village, passing each home. At the corners, incense is lit. Words are spoken. Old stories are whispered. The stars begin to show. And now, the night dance. The dancers return. This time, their masks are different. Some wear stars. Others wear skulls. The fire crackles. Flutes begin a soft, high song. The dancers circle the fire, then turn outward, then inward again. The rhythm is slow, hypnotic. You don't know how long it lasts. You forget where one dancer ends, and another begins. In some festivals, a sacred play is performed. A story of creation, or a tale of the hero twins, or a legend of love and loss. There are no scripts, only memory. The actors speak in verse, repeating phrases like waves. The audience listens, laughs, cries. Then comes the feast. Tamales are unwrapped, stews are ladled. Chocolate is poured from cup to cup, creating a rich froth. Maize, beans, squash, chilies all shared. No table, just mats, just firelight, just gratitude. And finally, the closing. An elder stands. She lifts a bowl of water. She speaks to the fire, to the ancestors, to the future. The bowl is passed to the priest, then to a child, then to the next. It circles the group. When it returns, it is poured into the fire. The steam rises like a blessing. The ceremony ends, but the memory does not. For the Maya, festivals were not entertainment. They were time made visible. They were the earth's breathing. The gods are speaking. The people remembered who they were and why. And now, dear listener, you have walked among them. You've followed the torchlight, heard the flute, tasted the maize, and watched the stories come alive in mask and movement. You have sat beneath stars older than the oldest drum. If this story soothed your breast or rocked your thoughts toward sleep, we invite you to subscribe so that these peaceful journeys may return to you again and again. Welcome again, dreamer of quiet worlds. Tonight, we journey not upward, not outward, but inward, into silence, into the shadow, into the slow, sacred space beneath the surface of life. The Maya called it Xibalba, the underworld, not a place of fire or punishment, but of caves, water, echoes, and spirit. A world as real as the waking one. A world every soul would visit, not in fear, but in passage. Let your thoughts soften. Now let the edges blur. And if this story brings you peace, we gently invite you to subscribe. These stories, like the stars, return when you need them most. Now close your eyes and take a single step down into Xibalba. It begins not with a door, but with a cave. Cool air, darkness, the hush of dripping water. In the lowlands of this Yucatan and the highlands of Guatemala, such caves were seen as the mouths of the underworld. Some led to underground rivers. Others were dry, filled with chambers that swallowed sound. The Maya did not avoid these places. They entered them with care, with offerings, chants, and silence. Xibalba means place of fright in the Quiche language, but its meaning is more layered than fear. It was the place of trials, of transformation, of returning. Not where bad souls were punished, but where all souls journeyed, to be tested, cleansed, and guided toward their next form. According to the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Maya, Xibalba was ruled by a council of death gods. They had names like One Death, Seven Death, and others who ruled over disease, hunger, fear, and decay. But these were not evil. They were necessary forces, keepers of balance, reminders that all things end and begin again. The hero twins, Hanapu and Ezbalank, were the ones who ventured into Xibalba and changed it forever. They did not go as victims. They went with a purpose, to avenge their father, to outwit the lords of death. They faced many trials. A house filled with knives. One was filled with cold. Another with darkness. One with fire. One with jaguars. Each house has a test. Each test is a transformation. But the hero twins did not fight. They played. They laughed. They tricked the gods. They danced in fire and returned. They died willingly and came back. When they finally rose into the sky, they became the sun and the moon. And through their story, the Maya learned that Xibalba is not the end. It is the in-between. Now let you walk slowly into one such sacred cave. A torch flickers in your hand. The walls are cool, damp. Stalactites hang like frozen time. You hear the drip, drip, drip of water. Somewhere, a priest hums a low chant. He carries a bowl of offerings, jade, cacao, feathers, maize. He places them on a rock and bows. He leaves without a sound dot in. These caves, the Maya made offerings for rain, for crops, for healing. They believed the gods listened better here, closer to the bones of the earth. Some caves held human bones, not from sacrifice, but from reverence. The dead were buried near these entrances, so they could begin their journey into Xibalba with guidance. The underworld was imagined in 9 layers in total, each one ruled by a different lord, each one darker, deeper, more mysterious. But within each was also knowledge, memory, and power. The journey was not linear. It twisted like roots, like vines. A soul would face trial, not to be judged, but to learn. And just as there were layers below, there were layers above 13 heavens, each home to gods of rain, sun, wind, moon, maize, stars. The world, to the Maya, was vertical. We live in the middle. Above us, the stars. Below us, Xibalba. Between them, we walked out to pass through Xibalba, meant facing fear, not avoiding it. A soul might be shown visions, moments from life, dreams half-formed, voices of ancestors. In some stories, the dead had to cross rivers, one of blood, one of scorpions, one of darkness. Some crossed on logs. Others are on the back of spirit animals, jaguars, deer, and turtles. Let us now visit a funeral. A man has died an elder. His family washes his body with herbs. They dress him in his finest clothes. A bit of jade is placed in his mouth to pay the toll in the underworld. Beside him they lay food, a torch, a flute, and a bowl of water. These are not gifts. They are tools. For the journey dot, the priest marks the date on a folded book. It is 6. Night, a good day to begin the path. He burns incense. The smoke curls into the sky. It is said the smoke carries messages, prayers, to guide the soul. The body is placed in a small grave, or beneath the floor of the home. Above it, a bowl is turned upside down. A thread is tied around a post. This marks the soul's return. The family will speak the name for 13 days. Then release it into silence. But they do not forget. They honor the soul during festivals. They call to it in dreams. Xibalba is not always beneath. It is also within, in dreams, in loss, in change. The Maya knew this. A sickness, a storm, a moment of grief-all could be a visit to Xibalba. But just like the hero twins, the people returned. Changed, wiser, renewed. In some cities, like Copan or Palenque, inscriptions speak of kings descending into Xibalba, not in fear, but in ceremony. A ritual death, followed by symbolic rebirth. These acts echoed the sun's journey, disappearing at dusk, entering the underworld, and rising again. The path through Xibalba is not straight. It winds, it tests, but it ends with light. Now sit with me beside a cenote natural sinkhole filled with still blue water. The air is cool. The surface is glass. You see your reflection, then deeper darkness. Offerings rest at the bottom, jade, bones, balls. These are not decorations. They are prayers, echoes, memories. A child walks to the edge. She tosses a flower into the water. It drifts, spins, sinks. Somewhere, a god receives it. You, dear listener, have now walked the soft edges of the underworld. You've felt the stone beneath your feet, the hush of ancient caves, the warmth of incense offered to darkness. And if this slow journey brought you calm, we invite you to subscribe so these gentle stories may walk with you whenever you need them. Welcome back, dreamer of ancient thoughts. You've returned to a place where sleep is not silence, but story, where the night is not the end of the day, but the beginning of another kind of journey. Tonight, we enter the world within the world, the place the Maya called Wayak or dream, a space where the ancestors whisper, the gods reveal, and the heart walks free from the body. This is not fantasy. It is sacred travel. If this chapter eases your mind or rocks your breath into stillness, we invite you to subscribe so these slow journeys may carry you through many more nights. Now, let the day fall away and step softly into the dream world. To the Maya, dreams were messages, not illusions, not random thoughts, but signs, stories, warnings, or blessings. They came from gods, ancestors, spirits of the forest, or the soul itself. Dreams could be personal, but they were never private. They mattered. They were shared. They were remembered. In the early morning, before the grinding of maize or the lighting of fire, family members sat together on woven mats. They asked, "What did you see in your sleep?" Children described flying birds, glowing caves, and talking jaguars. Elders listened. They smiled. They nodded. Ben spoke softly. "That was your grandfather." Or, "That means the rain is near." Not all dreams were bright. Some were confusing or frightening, but even these were held with respect. They were not pushed aside. They were interpreted, understood, not as curses, but as calls to action. A dream of drowning might lead a farmer to delay planting. A dream of fire might mean someone must cleanse the home with herbs and smoke. A dream of silence might be a sign to fast. There were dream interpreters in every village, men and women, known not by title, but by memory. They remembered dream symbols. They understood the days. They watched the sky. They knew when a dream was personal and when it belonged to the village. A dream of maize growing upside down? A bad omen. A dream of a hummingbird singing? A child will be born. A dream of a broken pot? Something must be repaired, not a vessel, but a relationship. Every symbol meant something. Every silence did too. Let's sit now by a grandmother and her grandson. He wakes from sleep, blinking in the morning light. She offers him warm atoll and asks what he saw. He describes a jaguar sitting by the river. It did not speak. It just watched. She nods and whispers, "You have been noticed." She burns copal in a small dish, fans the smoke toward him. She places a flower beside his hammock. The dream is not finished. It will return. And now he will be ready. Some dreams came again. And again, these were called returning dreams. They were signs that the soul had not yet understood the message. People fasted to prepare for such dreams. They ate only maize and drank only water for a day or two. Some slept in silence. No music, no talk, just stillness. They tied a red thread around their wrist to protect their spirit as it wandered. For the Maya, the soul could leave the body during dreams. It traveled to other worlds, to the spirit realm, to Xibalba, to the stars. It met beings that lived beyond words. Some returned with gifts, ideas, images, names. Others returned with warnings. The soul always came back, but it came back changed. This is why waking was slow. When a person rose from sleep, they did not jump. They sat, they breathed, they waited for the soul to settle again in the body. Only then would they speak. Dreams were also shared during ritual. On festival nights, people stayed awake until midnight, then slept near the fire in the plaza. In the morning, they told their dreams to the priest. He recorded them in his memory. He tied them to the calendar. If 3 people dreamed of owls on the same night, it was a sign. If someone dreamed of a burning temple, the fire was watched more closely. The community listened. In noble courts, dreams were recorded on painted pottery or in codices. A ruler might consult a dream before a battle. A scribe might design a mural based on a vision. A queen might name her child after the spirit she met while sleeping. Not all dreams were remembered, but even those forgotten were believed to have meaning. A person who could not recall their dream might carry a piece of obsidian in their pouch, close to the skin to strengthen memory. Others placed a feather under the hammock cord or slept near herbs like sweet, basil, or wild mint. Dreaming was also connected to birth and death. A pregnant woman might dream of animals. The kind of animal reveals something about the child's destiny. A jaguar meant leadership. A turtle meant wisdom. A hummingbird meant speed. A deer meant gentleness. These signs shaped the way the child was raised. When a person died, it was said they passed into the dream of the earth. Their soul traveled to Xibalba. Yes, but also into the dreams of the living. A grandmother might appear in her daughter's sleep, silent but smiling. A father might appear by a river, guiding a canoe. These dreams were cherished. They were not fantasy. They were visits. Let us now visit a dream ceremony. It is a quiet night. The moon is full. 10 people sit in a circle. They have fasted for 2 days. A priest burns cedar and copal. A musician plays a soft melody on a bone flute. One by one, the people lie back on mats and close their eyes. They breathe slowly. They do not speak. In the morning, they rise. One dreamed of a mountain with an open door. Another of a feather floating on black water. Another of a bright blue serpent. The priest listens. He nods. He says only this: the gods have sent a message. The path is opening. These dreams shape the week ahead. The market will be delayed. The field will be planted a day early. The family will prepare extra food. The calendar is consulted. Everything begins to shift. Because of a dream. Now sit beside the fire. A woman ties a piece of red thread around her child's wrist. She tucks a flower behind his ear. She sings a short, repetitive melody, not a lullaby, but a dream song. It has no words, only tone. The child's eyes close. His breath is even. The stars above him shine without blinking. You, dear listener, have now wandered through the dream paths of the Maya. You've seen the jaguar waiting in the mist, heard the flute of the spirit priest, watched the sky inside your breath. You've entered the space between silence and story. And if this journey brought you closer to sleep, we invite you to subscribe so these ancient worlds may return to you like dreams, again and again. Welcome again, soft-hearted listener. You've returned to the firelight of another time, where words fall like feathers and stories stretch across the night like constellations. Tonight, we turn our ears to the oldest sounds of the Mayan world, not drums or chants or footsteps, but stories, not read, not written, but spoken again and again, passed in whispers, repeated in song. They were not lessons. They were lives. If this quiet tale settles your thoughts or slows your breath, we gently invite you to subscribe. These sleepy journeys will always return, like a story retold. Now, let the fire crackle gently, and sit beside us as the myths begin. The stars are out. The hammocks are swaying. Children curl near their elders. The night is still, but the minds are ready. And so, a voice begins not loud, but steady. The voice of a grandfather, or a mother, or a sister. It doesn't matter who begins. The story knows the way. The first story is always about the beginning. Long ago, there was nothing but sky and sea. No land, no people, no animals. Only the gods, waiting. They spoke the world into being. With their words, they shaped the mountains, the rivers, the trees. Then they tried to create humans first from mud, but they dissolved in the rain. Then from wood, but they were hollow and had no hearts. So they tried again, this time from maize dough. And it worked. Their skin was golden like ripe corn. Their breath smelled of tortillas. They were the first people. We are their children, got the listeners nod. The children know this one, but they listen again anyway. It never grows old. Then comes the story of the hero twins Hanapu and Xibalba. Clever, old, born of a woman who spoke with skulls. Their father had died in the Underworld, Xibalba. The twins vowed to avenge him. They traveled to that shadowed world and faced its lords not with swords, but with wit. They entered the house of knives, the house of cold, the house of jaguars. They danced in the fire. They were tricked, killed, burned, but came back to life. In the end, they rose into the sky. One became the sun, the other the moon. Ever watching, ever circling. That's why they're always chasing each other. Across the heavens. Next comes a quieter tale. A deer who wanted to be a man. He learned to stand on two legs, learned to speak, and learned to make fire. But the gods saw he had no memory. So they returned him to the forest. As he ran, he cried. His tears became pearls in the grass. To this day, when you find dew on the morning leaves, you are seeing the memory of the deer who dreamed too far. Then, a woman of the sky who came down on a cord of smoke. She carried seeds in her mouth. She planted them as she walked. From them grew every flower in the world. But one day, she slept. And in her dream, all the flowers vanished. She woke in tears. But the flowers returned. She realized dreams are part of the growing. To sleep is not to lose. It is to plant. Now, a boy and a turtle. The boy was lonely. His parents had died, and no one in the village would feed him. One day, by the river, he met a turtle who spoke. The turtle gave him food and said, "Do not eat alone." The boy shared his food. The next day, more food appeared. He shared again. The village noticed. They asked him, "Where does your food come from?" He only smiled and said, "From kindness." They laughed. But when a storm came, and all the crops were ruined, only the boy had enough to share. He fed everyone. They never laughed again. And then, the tale of the nightbirds. Long ago, all birds were quiet. They had no songs. They whispered through the trees, hidden from the gods. One night, a small bird climbed a tall tree and asked the stars, "Why don't we sing?" The stars said, "Because you never asked." So the bird opened its beak and sang the first song. The gods were so pleased, they gave songs to every bird, but in different melodies. That's why the owl sings low, the quetzal sings sweetly, and the hummingbird sings too fast for us to hear. Another tale tells of the snake who swallowed the moon. During an eclipse, the snake tries to eat the moon, piece by piece. That's why it disappears. But if the people make noise, beat drums, shout, burn incense, the snake is frightened and spits it back out. So every eclipse is a rescue. The moon thanks us by returning whole. Now, a child speaks. She wants to tell a story too. The fire is low, but the eyes are bright. She tells of a grandmother made of stone who lived beneath a hill. Each day, she listened to the footsteps of the village. When someone was lonely, she sent a rabbit. When someone was afraid, she sent a breeze. When someone was cruel, she made them trip. She never left her cave, but the people felt her everywhere. To this day, when your fire burns low and still glows red, it means the stone grandmother is nearby, watching. The story ends. No one claps. There is no applause. Only nods, smiles, and silence. The fire crackles. One by one, the listeners drift to sleep. Some are in hammocks, others are on mats. A few still curled beside the glowing coals. The stories have been told. They are never finished. Because stories like stars circle back. Because stories like maize grow again. Because stories like dreams wait in the quiet for the next voice to speak. Dear listener, have now walked among those stories? You've sat beside the turtle, sung with the bird, chased the moon, to the stars. You've become part of the telling and the remembering. And if that brought you rest, we invite you to subscribe so you may return here again whenever you need a story to hold your dreams. Welcome again, still-hearted dreamer. You've followed the Maya through their rituals and rain, their food and fire, their births and stories, and their gods and sleep. But now we arrive at the edge of something quieter, the long, slow hush of an ending. Tonight we walk softly into the fall of the Maya, not in fire or fury, but in footsteps disappearing into jungle moss, temples sinking under trees, and songs fading into memory. If this journey brings you peace, we invite you to subscribe. The story does not end but softens like twilight. Now, breathe slow and walk with me into the whispering ruins. The forest is green, heavy, endless. Somewhere, stone walls crumble gently. Vines wrap around a stair that once led to the stars. A howler monkey calls. A parrot flutters above a broken plaza. No one replies. The people are gone, but the silence is not empty. It is full of memory. The fall of the Maya did not happen in one day, not one battle, not one storm. It happened over centuries, in cycles, in places, and in pauses. Some cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan grew quiet by the end of the Classic period, around 900 CE. Others, like Chichen Itza and Mayapan, continued for hundreds more years. There was no single collapse. There were many, soft and slow. Why? The question has many answers, all of them whispered. Some say it was drought-long years without rain, when crops withered and the cenotes sank. Others say it was war city against city, rulers rising and falling, alliances cracking like dry corn. Some point to soil exhaustion, too much maize from tired fields. Others speak of rebellion, people rising against kings and priests who asked for more than they could give. But perhaps the real answer is time. All things change. All rivers shift. All stories pause. Let us walk now through the city of Copan, once shining, now quiet. The temples are still grand. The ball court still stands. But the stelae are faded. The plazas are cracked. The homes are empty. The last kings here carved desperate messages into stone, trying to hold time still. But the rains came. The earth softened. The jungle crept in. In Tikal, great pyramids still rise above the canopy. The howler monkey temple, the temple of the jaguar. But the plazas are filled with silence. The people slowly left. Not all at once. A family here. A priest is there. One day, the market did not open. One night, the fire was not lit. And that was it. But this is not just sorrow. It is also a transformation. The Maya did not disappear. Their cities may have faded, but the people lived on. They moved. They changed. They settled in new places. They married, planted, and prayed. They spoke the same language, ate the same maize, sang the same lullabies. The forest took back the stone, but not the soul. And some cities kept going. In the Yucatan, Chichen Itza became a new center. Temples were built again. Priests chanted. Traders came from far away. For a while, the fire still burned brightly. Later, Mayapan rose as the last great capital. But even it, too, grew quiet by the 1400s. Then came the wind from across the sea. When the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, they found stone cities, jungle paths, painted codices, and people still calling themselves Maya. They saw temples, heard stories they did not understand. They brought new gods, new rulers, and new maps. The Maya resisted. Some fought, others hid. Some blended old with new. The fire dimmed, but it never died. The Spanish burned the codices, those precious books, made of bark, filled with glyphs and colors and stars. Only 4 survived, just 4 voices from thousands of years. But even so, the stories lived on, in song, in memory, in a whisper. Today, the ruins remain, but they are not empty. They are places of return. Archaeologists uncover temples beneath, vines. Descendants walk the same paths their ancestors once danced upon. The languages Yucatec, Keish, Mam, Kikchi, and more are still spoken by millions. The corn is still planted. The gods are still honored. The calendar still turns. Let us sit now beside a broken altar. The stone is cracked. Moss grows on its sides, but someone has left a fresh flower. A candle flickers. You hear a chant in the distance. A child laughs. The past is still here, breathing in the same forest. The Maya knew that time was a circle, not a line. That nothing truly ends. That even endings are beginnings. Their story didn't vanish it, just changed shape. You, gentle listener, have now walked the long path of the Mayan fall. Not a cliff, but a slope. Not a storm, but a drift. You've watched the forest embrace the city, the silence hold the prayer, the past fold into the present. And if this brought you rest, we invite you to subscribe so the story may return to you again, like an old temple in mist. Welcome back, faithful dreamer. Tonight, we reach the final step of this long and gentle journey through the Mayan world. But endings in Mayan time are never truly endings. They are returns, like the sun each morning, like the rains each year, like dreams each night. We've walked through temples and caves, stories and starlight, hammocks and markets, fires and silence. Now we come back to the present, to the people who still live this story. The living Maya, not as ruins, not as memories, but as neighbors, farmers, midwives, musicians, children, and keepers of the thread. If this final journey brings you peace, we invite you to subscribe so these soft stories may return. Like the first breath of sleep. Now, sit with me beneath the same sky as always, and meet the Maya of today. Across southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, the Maya live on, not as shadows, but as millions of people, each with a name, a voice, and a heartbeat that echoes the rhythm of centuries. They speak over 30 languages, each rooted in the tongues of kings and farmers, mothers and hunters. Yucatec, Kush, Kishi, Mam, Zotzel, Kanjubal. Every word is still shaped by breath warmed by fire. Let us begin in a village near Lake Atitlán in Guatemala. The sun rises slowly over the water. A woman in a hand-woven hupil kneels by the fire, flipping tortillas. Her granddaughter helps, humming a song in Keishi. The song is old, but still alive. Outside, the men prepare to walk to the fields. The fields. They carry tools made of metal now, but the walk is the same. The prayer before planting is the same. The corn, when it grows, is welcomed like an old friend. In the Yucatan, the elders still speak of Shak, the rain god, when the sky grows heavy. In Chiapas, families still climb the hills to light candles for the ancestors. In Belize, midwives chant old verses before delivering a child. In the Petén forest, a boy listens to a story of the hero Chui, just like it was told long ago by firelight. The names may vary, the details may shift, but the soul of the story remains. In cities too, the Maya thrive. They are teachers, engineers, artists, shopkeepers, weavers and students. Some wear jeans and carry smartphones. Others wear traditional dress and walk barefoot. Most do both, shifting with time, just as their ancestors did. The past is not something behind them. It walks beside them. Rituals continue. Quietly, a woman ties a red string around her child's wrist to protect against bad dreams. A farmer sprinkles the first maize seeds with blessed water. A family places a photo, a candle, and a piece of bread on an altar for the Day of the Dead. These are not reenactments. These are real, lived, believed. Let's walk through a marketplace in a highland town. The stalls overflow with tomatoes, squash, cacao, chilies, and corn. A young man sells hand-carved flutes. An old woman sells bundles of herbs. Children chase each other with laughter as their mothers barter in fast, musical kashikal. Nearby, a weaver ties the strap of her loom and begins another hoopil. It may take months, but each thread carries meaning. Sky, river, mountain, fire, child, moon dot in schools. Some Maya children learn Spanish or English, but others also study their native language. Some teachers are working to preserve these tongues, writing dictionaries, recording stories, teaching the old ways. In towns like Santiago Atitlan and Oxcoscab, entire generations are reclaiming identity, one word at a time. Across the region, Mayan calendars are still kept, not as relics, but as tools for planning, for planting, for naming a child. Certain days are better for weddings, others for building. Some are sacred, some are quiet. Time is still circular. The Zocan still turns, and each turn is honored in ceremonies. Elders gather to burn offerings. They speak to the four directions. They offer cacao, incense, flowers, and corn. They do not shout, they whisper. They do not demand, they thank. They invite balance. Around them, the young watch, not as tourists, but as family. And now let's visit a home in northern Guatemala. A boy sits beside his grandfather. The old man carves a flute while telling a story of a spirit deer who carried the wind on its back. The boy listens, eyes wide. Then he asks, "Is it true?" The old man smiles. All stories are true if they return to you. This is the soul of the Maya today. Not ancient, not modern, just alive. They have faced centuries of change, colonization, war, borders, churches, schools, politics, poverty, pride, language loss, and cultural theft. And still, they remain, breathing, singing, planting, praying, dreaming. The world may call them descendants, but they do not descend. They continue. Now, as the fire burns low one final time in our story, let us sit in silence together. Think of the hammocks swaying in a highland breeze, the slow grinding of maize, the stone hands pressing the tortilla. The child is chasing chickens. The priest was chanting to the wind. The flute echoes through the forest mist, the stars above the temple. The mother was humming an old dream song to her baby. The moon drifting. The story circling. You, kind listener, have now walked with the Maya from the breath of the beginning to the stillness of now. You followed them through fire and field, story and silence, life and loss and life again. This was not just history. It was a long and gentle remembering. And if these stories brought you comfort, we invite you to subscribe so that this world, this voice, this peace may return to you again and again when you need it most. Now, rest with the Maya. Let your sleep carry their stories into your dreams. Let your breath follow the beat of an ancient drum, quiet, steady, timeless. Good night and sleep well.